Go to 9. Step out the vehicle. Just get medical en route for the driver. Driver's conscious and breathing. I have mine on the squad. Come here. $4.99. I'm okay. Here. Just lean back. You have a license on you?
Huh?
You have a license on you? Do you have a license?
Zachariah.
That's your name?
Zachariah.
Okay.
Clearly, 23-year-old Zachariah.
The initial incident, an immediate threat. In the early hours of the morning when traffic volume is reduced but roadway risk remains high, a critical incident began to unfold on a major interstate highway in Milwaukee County. At approximately 2:36 a.m. on Thursday, January 1st, 2026, a patrol sergeant with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office observed a vehicle traveling in the wrong direction on Interstate 43. The vehicle, later identified as a Mercedes-Benz, was moving northbound while occupying the southbound lanes, an error that represents one of the most dangerous forms of roadway behavior. Wrong-way driving incidents are considered high-risk emergencies due to their unpredictability and the limited reaction time afforded to other motorists. Even at lower speeds, such violations dramatically increase the probability of head-on collisions, which are statistically among the most lethal types of traffic crashes. In this case, the risk was compounded by the time of day, reduced visibility, and the driver's apparent lack of situational awareness. Upon identifying the threat, the sergeant immediately alerted dispatch and broadcast the situation over the patrol channel. This communication initiated a coordinated response, with multiple deputies moving to intercept the vehicle before it could cause serious injury or loss of life. Law enforcement protocol in such scenarios prioritizes rapid containment, traffic control, and driver interception, often requiring officers to place themselves in positions of elevated personal risk. As deputies maneuvered to locate and stop the vehicle, one patrol unit positioned itself in the driver's projected path in an attempt to slow or block further movement. However, rather than stopping safely, the wrong-way driver collided with a marked sheriff's squad car. Although the deputy involved avoided serious injury, the patrol vehicle sustained significant damage, marking the first of several law enforcement assets impacted during the incident. The collision underscored the immediate danger posed not only to the public, but also to responding officers. Wrong-way enforcement frequently requires deputies to operate against the normal flow of traffic, increasing the likelihood of secondary crashes. In this instance, the initial containment effort resulted in direct vehicular impact, confirming that the driver was either unable or unwilling to respond appropriately to emergency intervention. Following the collision, deputies quickly assessed the scene to determine injuries, secure the area, and prevent further roadway hazards. The driver was found conscious and breathing, with no immediate life-threatening injuries observed. This initial medical assessment allowed officers to shift focus towards securing the individual and stabilizing the situation. At this stage, the priority transitioned from active pursuit to controlled detainment. The roadway environment was evaluated, traffic lanes were restricted as necessary, and additional emergency resources were notified. The incident, which began as a wrong-way driving alert, had now escalated into a multi-vehicle law enforcement collision, requiring formal investigation. Early indicators suggested that the driver displayed significant disorientation. Observations made during the initial contact pointed to confusion regarding location, direction of travel, and the events that had just occurred. Such indicators are critical in early investigative assessments, as they may suggest impairment, medical distress, or cognitive disruption. As deputies continued securing the scene, it became evident that the incident would extend beyond a routine traffic stop. The presence of vehicle damage, the nature of the driving behavior, and the risk imposed on multiple officers elevated the matter into a criminal investigation involving reckless endangerment. Part 1 establishes the foundation of the case: a wrong-way driver operating in a high-risk manner, immediate law enforcement intervention, and the rapid escalation from traffic violation to serious public safety incident. The events of this initial phase set the stage for deeper examination into the driver's condition, intent, and the legal consequences that would follow. Driver condition, disorientation, and scene stabilization. Following the initial collision with a law enforcement vehicle, deputies shifted their focus from interception to assessment and containment. With the immediate threat of uncontrolled wrong-way travel neutralized, the priority became securing the driver, evaluating physical condition, and stabilizing the scene to prevent secondary hazards. These steps are critical in incidents involving wrong-way driving, as such behavior often signals severe impairment or medical crisis. The driver, later identified as a 23-year-old individual, was found conscious and responsive, though visibly disoriented. Initial observations indicated confusion regarding location, direction of travel, and the sequence of events that had just occurred. Disorientation of this nature is a significant indicator in traffic enforcement analysis, often associated with intoxication, fatigue, neurological impairment, or a combination of contributing factors. From an investigative standpoint, the driver's apparent lack of awareness raised immediate concerns about cognitive functioning at the time of the incident. In wrong-way driving cases, officers assess whether the behavior resulted from navigational error, momentary confusion, or sustained impairment. In this instance, the driver's inability to demonstrate situational clarity suggested that the behavior was not an isolated mistake but part of a broader pattern of compromised judgment. As deputies guided the driver away from the damaged vehicle, attention turned to ensuring medical stability. While no critical injuries were immediately apparent, standard procedure required continuous monitoring. Collisions involving patrol vehicles introduce additional complexity, as officers must account for both civilian and law enforcement safety, while managing traffic flow and evidence preservation. The roadway environment was actively secured. Traffic lanes were closed or restricted to create a safety perimeter, minimizing the risk of additional collisions. Emergency lighting, patrol vehicle positioning, and coordinated communication among responding units were used to control the scene. These measures reflect established protocols for high-risk freeway incidents, where secondary crashes are a leading cause of responder injury. During this phase, deputies began documenting behavioral indicators relevant to impairment assessment. Observable signs included delayed responses, inconsistent awareness, and difficulty maintaining focus. Such indicators are recorded carefully as they later inform determinations regarding intoxication, fitness to drive, and potential criminal liability. Officers are trained to distinguish between emotional distress and cognitive impairment, a distinction that becomes especially important when the subject displays confusion rather than agitation. A preliminary search of the vehicle was conducted for safety and evidentiary purposes. This process aims to identify hazards, secure valuables, and document any substances that may have contributed to impaired driving. In this case, small quantities of marijuana residue were discovered within the vehicle, further reinforcing concerns regarding impairment. While the presence of such material alone does not establish intoxication, it contributes to the totality of circumstances considered by investigators. As scene control continued, deputies assessed the extent of damage to the patrol vehicle involved in the collision. Significant structural damage was observed, necessitating removal of the vehicle from service. This development underscored the severity of the incident and the tangible consequences of the driver's actions, extending beyond personal risk to include harm to public resources and law enforcement operations. Throughout this stage, law enforcement maintained procedural discipline. The driver was secured in a patrol unit to prevent further risk, while deputies coordinated crash investigation responsibilities, vehicle recovery, and supervisory notification. This structured approach reflects the importance of maintaining operational order in chaotic and potentially dangerous situations. Part 2 highlights the transition from immediate threat response to investigative assessment. The driver's condition, behavioral indicators, and the physical environment collectively shaped the direction of the case. What initially appeared as a wrong-way driving incident increasingly pointed toward impairment and reckless endangerment, setting the foundation for formal charges and deeper legal scrutiny. Indicators of impairment, evidence collection, and arrest determination. As the scene stabilized, the investigative focus shifted toward determining the underlying cause of the driver's behavior. Wrong-way driving on a limited-access freeway is statistically associated with severe impairment, and law enforcement protocols require a thorough evaluation to identify contributing factors such as alcohol, controlled substances, or extreme fatigue. The objective at this stage was not assumption, but systematic evidence collection. Deputies observed continued signs of cognitive impairment. The driver demonstrated fluctuating levels of awareness, difficulty recalling recent events, and limited ability to follow instructions. These behaviors persisted beyond the immediate stress of the collision, suggesting that the disorientation was not solely a reaction to the crash, but reflective of an impaired mental state that predated the incident. Physical indicators further supported this assessment. The driver exhibited slowed motor responses and poor coordination, characteristics commonly documented in impaired driving investigations. While no single observation is determinative, the convergence of behavioral, cognitive, and physical signs strengthened the overall evidentiary picture. Investigators rely on this cumulative analysis, known as the totality of circumstances, to guide enforcement decisions. In addition to observational evidence, deputies documented environmental and contextual factors. The time of the incident, early morning hours on New Year's Day, was noted as a period with historically elevated rates of alcohol-related driving offenses. While timing alone does not establish intoxication, it provides contextual relevance when combined with observed impairment and erratic driving patterns. The discovery of marijuana residue within the vehicle added another layer to the investigation. Although residue does not confirm active intoxication, its presence warranted further evaluation. Law enforcement policy requires consideration of any substance that could impair perception, reaction time, or judgment. This finding reinforced the decision to pursue a comprehensive impairment assessment rather than attributing the behavior to confusion alone. Given the severity of the incident and the risk posed to both the public and responding officers, deputies determined that roadside resolution was neither appropriate nor sufficient. The collision with a patrol vehicle combined with the prolonged wrong-way travel met the threshold for custodial arrest. This decision was grounded in statutory definitions of reckless endangerment, which focus on conduct that creates a substantial risk of serious harm, regardless of whether injury ultimately occurs. Formal arrest procedures were initiated in accordance with departmental policy. The driver was secured to ensure safety and prevent further impairment-related behavior. At this stage, the investigation transitioned from assessment to enforcement, marking a critical shift in the case. The focus moved from determining whether impairment existed to documenting the extent and implications of the conduct. Subsequent steps included preparation for chemical testing to establish the presence and concentration of intoxicants. Such testing plays a central role in impaired driving cases, providing objective data to supplement observational evidence. Refusal or inability to complete standardized evaluations is itself documented, as it may carry legal consequences under implied consent laws. Throughout this process, deputies maintained a methodical approach designed to preserve evidentiary integrity. Documentation was detailed and chronological, ensuring that each observation and decision could be independently reviewed. This level of precision is essential in cases involving felony-level charges, where scrutiny from prosecutors, defense counsel, and the court is expected. Part 3 represents the point at which the incident fully crystallized into a criminal case. The combination of wrong-way driving, collision with law enforcement, observable impairment, and contextual risk factors established a clear basis for arrest. The investigative narrative now extended beyond the immediate event, laying the groundwork for formal charges, judicial review, and long-term consequences tied to public safety and accountability. Formal charges, custodial processing, and legal evaluation. Following the arrest, the case entered the custodial and legal processing phase, where investigative findings were translated into formal charges under state law. This stage marked the transition from on-scene enforcement to institutional review, ensuring that the incident was evaluated within established legal frameworks rather than discretionary judgment. Based on the documented conduct, prosecutors identified multiple offenses. The most serious charge stemmed from reckless endangerment, classified at the felony level due to the substantial risk created by wrong-way driving on a controlled access highway. Legal standards define reckless endangerment not by the outcome, but by the degree of danger imposed on others. In this case, prolonged wrong-way travel at freeway speeds, combined with a collision involving a law enforcement vehicle, satisfied that threshold. In addition to the felony count, the driver faced misdemeanor charges related to operating while intoxicated. The classification reflected both observed impairment and the broader investigative context, including environmental factors, physical indicators, and the presence of controlled substances. The determination of a second offense elevated the seriousness of the charge, signaling prior involvement with impaired driving enforcement and influencing potential sentencing exposure. Custodial processing proceeded in accordance with standardized intake procedures. Personal identifying information was verified, fingerprints were collected, and photographs were taken to establish a permanent record. These steps serve both administrative and evidentiary purposes, ensuring accurate identification and facilitating future court proceedings. Chemical testing results and officer observations were consolidated into an evidentiary file. This compilation provided prosecutors with objective data to support the charges, reducing reliance on subjective interpretation. In impaired driving cases, such corroboration is essential to withstand legal scrutiny and to demonstrate that enforcement decisions were based on measurable factors rather than assumption. Bond determination followed shortly thereafter. The court assessed the severity of the charges, the risk posed to public safety, and the likelihood of future violations. Given the combination of felony reckless endangerment and repeat intoxicated operation, a substantial cash bond was imposed. Conditions of release included absolute sobriety and electronic or breath-based monitoring, reflecting a preventive approach aimed at reducing immediate risk rather than punitive confinement alone. From a legal perspective, this phase underscored the distinction between punishment and precaution. Pre-trial conditions are designed to stabilize behavior and protect the public while the case proceeds, acknowledging that guilt has not yet been adjudicated. However, the restrictive nature of the conditions also signaled the court's assessment of the underlying risk. The case documentation was then distributed across multiple institutional channels. Prosecutors prepared for arraignment, while administrative agencies initiated parallel reviews affecting driving privileges. License suspension or revocation proceedings often operate independently of criminal adjudication, reinforcing the layered nature of accountability in traffic-related offenses. Internally, the incident underwent supervisory review within the Sheriff's Department. Such reviews assess adherence to policy, officer safety considerations, and the proportionality of enforcement actions. This process contributes to organizational accountability and strengthens the integrity of cases that advance to trial. Part 4 represents the point at which the incident became fully embedded within the justice system. What began as erratic driving evolved into formal allegations, supported by structured evidence and legal analysis. The focus now extended beyond immediate behavior to questions of responsibility, risk management, and the appropriate balance between individual rights and collective safety. Judicial proceedings, long-term consequences, and public safety implications. As the case advanced into the judicial phase, the focus shifted from immediate enforcement and procedural compliance to long-term accountability and systemic evaluation. Court proceedings served as the formal arena in which evidence was examined, responsibility assessed, and consequences determined under statutory law. During preliminary hearings, prosecutors presented the factual basis for the charges, relying on a structured body of evidence accumulated during the investigation. This included dashboard camera footage documenting the wrong-way travel, collision impacts involving multiple squad vehicles, speed assessments, and officer reports detailing observed impairment. Together, these materials established a chronological narrative of events and demonstrated a sustained pattern of dangerous conduct rather than an isolated error. Defense considerations centered on impairment, intent, and mitigating circumstances. However, in cases involving reckless endangerment, legal analysis places limited weight on subjective intent. The central question becomes whether a reasonable person would recognize the substantial risk created by the behavior. Wrong-way freeway driving, particularly in early morning hours when visibility and reaction time are reduced, is widely recognized as one of the most hazardous traffic violations. Courts consistently treat such conduct as inherently dangerous, regardless of the driver's stated awareness at the time. Sentencing exposure reflected this legal framework. Felony reckless endangerment carries the potential for incarceration, extended probation, and long-term license revocation. Misdemeanor operating while intoxicated, especially as a repeat offense, introduces mandatory penalties such as fines, treatment requirements, and ignition interlock conditions. While final outcomes vary by jurisdiction and judicial discretion, the cumulative nature of the charges significantly increases the stakes compared to standard traffic cases. Parallel to the criminal proceedings, administrative consequences continued to unfold. Departments of motor vehicles initiated independent reviews of the driver's operating privileges. These proceedings often rely on a lower burden of proof than criminal courts, allowing for swift suspension or revocation of licenses as a preventive measure. From a public safety perspective, this separation ensures that potentially dangerous drivers are restricted from roadways even while criminal cases remain unresolved. Psychologically, this phase often represents a period of delayed realization. With the immediacy of arrest replaced by structured legal timelines, individuals are confronted with the enduring implications of their actions. Court appearances, compliance monitoring, and mandated programs transform a single incident into an ongoing process of accountability. Research in traffic psychology indicates that this sustained engagement with the justice system can have a stronger deterrent effect than brief punitive encounters alone. Institutionally, cases of this nature contribute to broader enforcement and policy discussions. Wrong-way driving incidents are routinely analyzed by transportation agencies and law enforcement to identify contributing factors such as impaired driving patterns, roadway design, and signage effectiveness. Data derived from individual cases informs preventive strategies, including enhanced ramp markings, detection systems, and public awareness campaigns aimed at reducing similar incidents. From a societal standpoint, the case underscores a central principle of modern traffic law. Public roadways function as shared environments where individual behavior carries collective risk. Enforcement actions, judicial outcomes, and administrative sanctions operate not solely to punish but to reinforce norms of responsibility essential to communal safety. As proceedings continued, the narrative of the incident extended beyond the driver and officers involved. It became part of a larger body of cases, shaping legal precedent, enforcement priorities, and public understanding of roadway risk. Each documented outcome added to the empirical foundation used by courts, policymakers, and safety advocates to justify intervention thresholds and penalty structures. Part 5 concludes the case's progression by highlighting how accountability unfolds over time. What began as erratic, dangerous driving evolved into a multi-layered legal response with lasting personal, institutional, and societal effects. The incident's significance lies not only in its immediate resolution, but in its contribution to the ongoing effort to balance individual freedom with the fundamental obligation to protect human life on public roads.